Welcome to another episode of Health and Wellness. I'm your host, Roseanne Green, and today we're going to speak on the topic, depression. Is it an illness or is it a mindset? Depression has been touching so many different lives, affecting so many different lives, and affecting so many families. Suicide, a serious issue, most times because of persons suffering from depression. Stay with us as we seek more answers and give you information.
If the black dog of depression makes you feel like the saddest soul on earth, you're not alone. Around 350 million people share this debilitating but treatable condition. If you're worried about someone, ask if they're okay. If you're not doing so well yourself, ask for help. There is no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life. So get help, be helped, and always hold on to hope.
Welcome back to Health and Wellness. I'm your host, Roseanne Green, and today we're talking about depression as it relates to, is it an illness or a mindset? And on the program today with me is Lynn Ann Anthony. Yes, I love that name too. She is a woman who has a passion for people and the love and care for our community, and because of that she's a community activist and also currently holds a bachelor degree in psychology and pursuing a master's in counseling. Welcome to the show, Lynn Ann. I love your name.
Thank you.
It's very unique. Thank you so much for joining me today on the show. It's a pleasure. We always have an interesting conversation that we speak on different levels and speak about different disciplines. But today is a very interesting topic that we're going to talk about. And what I always say is that when you have someone you're speaking with, you must have that connection, and you bring a level of comfort. And I must thank you that you bring a level of comfort so that we can converse on a different level.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much. But today we're talking about a serious topic, and it's depression. And a lot of persons, they're not sure if it's an illness or they're just having a different mindset. So we're going to set apart the two and just make sure we give person information today. We're going to inform people, we're going to help them to make a decision as to what am I experiencing and how can I get help, basically. So before we even touch anything else, let's look at in terms of what is depression in itself.
Well, depression is a mental illness. And in terms of mental illnesses, there is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. We're in volume 5 right now, and that's the handbook that people in the mental health field use to get definitions for diseases. And according to that manual, that handbook, depression is an illness. And so it is not just a feeling. I think a lot of times depression is a buzzword, and we use depression in terms of sadness. Oh, I feel depressed. And when in fact it's like, okay, you're feeling sad, you have the blues or whatever. But depression is not just sadness. Sadness is just one component of it.
Right.
So a person who is, in order to be clinically depressed, you have to have had the symptoms for more than 2 weeks. It has to be not just sadness. There are other things that come with it. One of the key things about depression is not feeling anything.
Right.
As opposed to just being sad. You're not motivated. You don't feel like getting up. You don't have energy to do anything. You don't feel happiness about things that you should be happy about.
Right.
Like you see your kids come into the room, or you have a visit from friends, you go on vacation to a beautiful location,
right,
and you still feel sad. So, your favorite meal doesn't do it, your favorite people. It's just that you have this overwhelming sense of sadness, and the things that usually bring you joy don't bring the same kind of joy to you.
Wow.
You feel that you either sleep too much or you don't sleep enough.
Right.
Your eating patterns are interrupted. You either eat too much or you don't eat enough. You feel confused. You have trouble pulling your thoughts together. You have trouble making decisions. You have problems remembering things. It's almost like you're in a mental fog. So it's not just the sadness component of it. Sometimes you're irritable,
Right.
you know. So there's a whole lot of other things that come with it. And then the sadness is unremitting. It's like, you know, in one day, in 1 hour, you might feel sad, and then something happens and it makes you laugh, and
Right.
that kind of thing. So you're just sad. But when the sadness is unremitting, like it just never lets up,
Wow.
you know, and it's gone on for more than 2 weeks, then we say, you know, you need to start talking to somebody
Right.
about depression. You know, the DMV, it's not the driver's place. It's not the driver's place.
Right, right.
But the DSM is what I wanted to say. The DSM lists a whole list of other symptoms that come along with that. And in order to be diagnosed with depression, you have to have at least 5 of those symptoms coming together. And what I want to say to people right now is that sadness is a normal part of the human psyche.
Exactly.
You have to be sad if you see certain things happening to you. Sadness, is, you know, it follows loss. If you've lost a loved one, lost a husband, lost a job, lost your home,
Right.
whatever, it's normal to feel sad under those circumstances. But if it is that the sadness continues, it's unremitting. You know, you feel like you're in a mental fog,
Right.
and your sleeping and eating have changed. You can't make decisions, then, you know, and a lot of other things. But if that's where you are, the key thing to do is to talk to somebody.
Exactly, exactly. And that's something that we're going to try to make sure that is very clear today, is
Yes.
that help is available,
Yes.
and reach out to someone. When you're experiencing any of these symptoms that we're talking about, reach out to someone, please. But also, I want to talk about in terms of gender. Does depression affects or exhibit different signs in a male versus a female?
Yes, you know, because women, we talk a lot more than men do, and we emote a lot more than men do. And so, you know, in women, the studies have shown that we more express the sadness, but men are quiet, you know, they express it as possibly anger, you know, they express it as tiredness or sleepiness or things like that. But women would be sad, and we would have what we normally think of as depression.
Exactly.
But you know, the men don't show you what the world thinks of as depression. But then there's the changing in the eating habits, there's the sleepiness, there is the changing in the mood, and those kinds of things. But I think the key thing we need to think about, because like with children, you might have a child saying to you, like, I don't want to go to school today. You know, what the key thing to look for is a change in what is normal for that person.
Okay. Okay.
You know,
Okay.
if they're because people can be introverts and normally quiet and don't talk a lot, so you can't say, well, they're quiet. But if a person is quiet more so than they normally are,
Right.
then, you know, just look at changes in what is that person's
Right.
normal.
Wow. Let's look at in terms of the different types of depression, because there are different types of
Yes.
depression. And one of the most interesting one that I looked at is postpartum depression, which a lot of mothers, new mothers go through. So explain.
Well, depression, quote unquote, after you've had a baby is normal. It's a hormonal thing. You know, there's a lot of hormonal changes that are happening. And then on a psychological thing, when you're pregnant, everybody worships at your feet. You know, it's, oh, she's pregnant, give her a seat. Oh, she's pregnant, give her what she wants
Right.
to eat. And you're the star of the show.
Right, right.
And then you've delivered the baby. And then, oh, the baby's cute. Oh, yeah, you over there. You know, the baby's cute. Oh, yeah, how you
You're
feeling?
rejected.
You know, and so we don't say it, but, you know, there's a whole lot of other things that are happening psychologically,
Right.
you know, emotionally, you know, in terms of your hormone balances
Right.
and all kinds of stuff. And then there's the physical labor. That's why they call it labor of delivering the baby
Right.
and all of that. So it's normal for you to feel a little out of sorts after you've had a baby.
Right.
So feeling out of sorts or feeling sad does not necessarily immediately go, oh, she has postpartum.
Right. Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
But then again, it's when it goes overboard. You know, it's when all those symptoms we just talked about, that they all come together.
Okay.
When you're having trouble bonding with your baby, you know, and all of those things. If you think that it's going too far, ask for help.
Right.
Because one of the key things about postpartum is that there is this feeling that, oh, so I just had a baby, I'm a mom now, and I'm supposed to be overjoyed. And you're not feeling that joy.
Right.
And you don't want to tell anybody, because then it makes you a bad mother, because, well, why am I not feeling what they say that I should feel?
Right, right.
But if you think that that is what is happening to you, if you don't feel like you can talk to a family member or a close friend or whatever, speak to your nurse. There's a lactation consultant that comes around to see new mothers. You have a 2-week postpartum visit with your doctor. Talk to your doctor
Right.
when you go in for your 2-week visit. Talk to the nurse that helps you with lactation. Speak to some kind of clinical professional,
Right.
because they expect these things to happen and they know how to help you to walk yourself through them.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting. And we're saying again, there's help available.
Yes, there is
help.
always help.
Yeah.
I think that is going to be the key throughout this entire segment. There is help. Don't sit alone. Don't keep it to yourself. If
Exactly.
you don't feel that you can talk to a family member, speak to your primary care physician.
Exactly.
They're there to help you, and they don't judge. Yeah.
No. they're in a place that they can't be judgmental
Right.
towards the patient. There's a popular one that we looked persons look at or personal experience, and that's bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit
well,
more.
I don't know how popular people are with the experiencing of the bipolar, but it's very popular in the media, you know.
Yes, yes.
And it's even like a, oh, you bipolar.
Yes, and
you know.
it's used very lightly,
Right,
but we
you
want to
know, you
understand what it is.
bipolar.
Right, what
But
it is.
it's listed amongst, you know, amongst the disorders when we discuss depression, but it is a disorder separate and apart from depression, because there's a component to it, mania, hence the term bipolar, bi being two, polar being opposites.
Right.
So there is the high of the mania, where you feel very happy and very exuberant and wanting to do and wanting to be. And then there's the crash that happens, and then there's the depression that happens. But I mean, I won't go into depth about bipolar at this time, because, you know, just to say mania and crash, it gives one the impression that it's like you cycling in and out of this every 10 minutes and whatever.
Right.
And that is not so. And because the experience of it is different for everybody. So in order for me to tell you what it is or give you a sense of something that you're looking for,
Right.
I don't think that this is the format for it. But if you see somebody is like really manic, like, you know, like they're having very strong urges to do things like, for example, as a woman, I want to wear a lot of makeup, I want the big hair, and I want to run out in the middle of the street and climb up on a pole and, you know, tell the world, then, and if that's not my normal personality, then that's something to pay attention to, you know? So that's kind of the mania. The mania is, I am God. I can rule the world. I can build a bridge in 2 days. I can cross the river swimming, and I've never swum a day in my,
Right.
I've never swum a day in my life, but I want to go swimming. So it's the extremes that you look for, as opposed to the depression of,
Right.
I don't feel anything and I just want to lie around. You know, but if you suspect that this is happening to you, or if you observe those kinds of changes in your loved ones, again, talk to somebody.
Talk to someone, right. And another one that's very interesting, and I think I really want you to explain this one, is called persistent depressive disorder.
Well, the persistent depressive disorder has, it's all the symptoms of depression that we talked about for major depression, but it, as it says, persistent. It
Right.
lasts for over 2 years. You know, so it's like a protracted period of just sadness and all of these symptoms. But it's not just the sadness. Again, it's the I don't feel anything.
Right.
That nothing moves me. That I'm not motivated to do anything.
Right.
And this is happening to you for a protracted period. According to the DSM, it has gone on for more than 2 years. And it can be with periods of really major depression interspersed, but this overwhelming mood of, you know, I don't feel anything, and it's going on like that. If it's gone on for 2 years, you should have already been speaking to somebody, or somebody should have been speaking to somebody about you.
Right.
But if it has, it's not normal.
Right.
You know, it's not the best, the most optimal place to be. And I think people resign themselves to, oh, well, this is just who I am, or this is just who she is, and she
Right.
just does
Just
that.
let it go.
And yeah, and don't pay her no mind, because that's what she does. She always sulking in the corner or whatever.
Right.
Talk to somebody.
Right. That is true. And can this lead to major depression? Can this, in terms, because you know, persistent disordered depression, it moves in like over 2 years, but can this phase leads to major depression?
Well, I think it's more of the question of, it's a question of length, because for major depression, the requirement is that you've been having the experiences for more than 2 weeks.
Right.
And so major depression can be a component of that.
Oh, okay.
You know, there can be periods during that 2-year cycle where
Right.
you've had major depression, where you have all those components in place.
Right.
And then, you know, over the 2-year period, you know, it's just like you just have this consistent mood of, you know, sadness and just not feeling anything, and, you know, not being able to experience pleasure and all of that. So it's a matter of length of time. You know, it's a matter of the length of time, but
it's very serious, because for persons who I heard something while you were speaking before in terms of after 2 weeks. Let's talk about that, because some persons, they're sad for a period of time and they're like, okay, this is normal. After 2 weeks, it becomes something of concern.
well,
Or do you get concerned as a family member, or even yourself, like, why am I feeling this way for this period of time? So should there be a time frame placed on sadness or
the
feeling of depression?
people experience sadness differently, and people experience just life. All of our experiences, we respond to things differently, and we feel differently. But the analogy that I would use is kind of like having a cold. Like if you had a cold and you went to the doctor, you're like, oh, you have a cold. It normally runs 2 weeks. You know, just go home and wait it out, you know, suck on a lemon, whatever it is that you do for a cold, and, you know, do that. But if after 2 weeks you still coughing and hacking up your lungs and all of that, then you start becoming concerned. You're like, well, wait a minute, this cold is not breaking. I need to talk to somebody. And so you go, you sit with your clinician, and they're like, oh, well, no, this may not just be a cold. You may be having the flu, or you may have, you know, an upper respiratory situation, and then they look into it. So it's kind of the same thing. I mean, the manual says 2 weeks, and that's what the professionals go with, and so I go with that also. But you have to know. You get that sense of this is going on too long. You know? But then that's like an arbitrary thing to say, because if my mother died, are you going to tell me I could only cry for 2 weeks and no more?
Right.
You know?
Especially with grieving, I know with that.
So,
like,
exactly.
what kind of time
You know,
frame will you put on that?
Right. You know, if my child died, if my husband died, you know, if I was in an accident and I broke my leg or whatever, are you going to tell me I could only cry for 2 weeks?
Exactly.
So I don't think that we should get stuck on, oh, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 2 weeks. Okay, doctor. You know, I don't think that is necessarily what we're saying. I don't. But it's kind of put there so that you have something that kind of alerts you to start paying attention
Right.
that this behavior is
alert.
going on for too long. You know, that this person is not, as we say, you're not yourself.
Exactly.
Kind of thing, and we need to pay attention.
Okay. Wow. I know the conversation is very interesting, and please stay with us. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to speak more on the other side of this break. But let me give you the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number. That's 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dear Depression, we go way back. I remember the first time I met you. I was 7 years old, a pigtailed lover of books, tees for the sneakers my mother could barely afford. The second time I met you was at a house party where a stranger packed himself into my mouth. It was the first time I understand the word ugly. We met again when I learned I had lupus and found out my body now belonged to an incurable disease. And again, when I was sad for the 49th day in a row, I begged you to go away, but you would not leave. You, depression, are my childhood friend. The midnight voices in my head, a slick tongue. You pretend to have the answers, but loving you got me sick, got me suicide watched, got me blue happy pills. Find the nearest ledge, you say. Walk out, you say. Suspend, you say. Wouldn't I be happier dead yesterday? I cried enough to name myself the sad girl again. Lonely has developed an authority where my thoughts are family. Always fussing about the wrong I have done, about the pretty I burned. What I learn of sadness is from you. You tell me boys won't love me, but a fasten rope can. You tell me lupus is incurable, can't have 7 children, can't be hospitalized 3 times in 1 year and call that healing. You, a contradiction, a house of lies. Sickness can do that. It can lie. It can claw. My sadness will not cease. It will not quiet. And I am afraid to die. I am afraid to die. Depression is a house of teeth. It will write you into a story without rest. It will kin you, comb your mouth into a beautiful haunting, and name it a vacant wilderness. But dare yourself, extraordinary human, to run into joy screaming, you cannot have me. You cannot have me. I am not my past. I am worthy of love. I am worthy. I am forgiving myself for not being strong enough to believe in myself. I can tell you, I do not know who my father is. I can tell you, a best friend's father molested me. I can tell you the number of men I let crawl into my body, but I would rather tell you I am letting go. I am letting failure go. I am letting loneliness go. I will not give up. You will not silence me. Sincerely, Tanya.
Thank you so much for staying with us on another episode of Health and Wellness. I'm your host, Rosen Green, and with me is Lynn Ann. I love calling that name. Lynn Ann, and we're talking about depression, and we're outlining, or we're giving you information as it relates to how to identify the signs and how to get help for if you're suffering from depression, or if a family member is suffering from depression. So right now we're going to go back into our discussion. Before we spoke about what exactly is depression, and now we're just going to look at in terms of which of these type of depression that leads to mental illness.
Well, depression is in and of itself a mental illness, as we talked about earlier. According to the DSM, it is a standalone as it were. It's a standalone illness. And so I think the question becomes, what is our perception of mental illness? Because when we ask the question, does depression lead to mental illness? I think there is a fear factor in there, because it says, okay, if I'm depressed, does it mean that I am going to go crazy? Am I going to become that person who is shaking and running down the street scared and, you know, waving my clothes in the air? And, you know, I think all those kind of concepts that people have in their mind as to what crazy is or what mentally ill is.
So it's very important that persons know that they're safe.
Yes.
You are safe. You are safe. And before we go to the other question, remember the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is running on the screen. It's 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. Well, you're seeing it running. So that's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So you don't have to be the person suffering from depression, but you can be a family member calling in on behalf of a family.
Right. And I think what you also need to know is, yes, the number says suicide hotline, and so you might, and this is another reason why people may not want to call, because it's the suicide hotline.
Right.
But it's not just for if you're feeling suicidal. Right?
Prevention.
If you want to talk to somebody, if you feel overwhelmed by your circumstances and you need to talk to somebody, you call that number. It's to prevent it from happening.
Exactly.
You know,
those
Yes.
points are very important, because as we close, because we're doing a part 2 to this, so we're wrapping up this aspect in terms of saying, get help or be helped. So getting help is on your own. Be helped by a family member. So we
Yes.
encourage persons to speak out. Don't be quiet until you see a person, sadly, standing on a bridge or doing something, hurting themselves. You don't want to let it reach to that point. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us on part 1 or part 2. When we come back, on another episode, we're going to speak on look at some of the underlying causes of depression, and also give you some helpful tips of how to maintain a good mental state of mind, or live a good balanced life, and try to prevent, let me correct myself, mental illness. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and as I always say, stay well.